Hello and welcome to episode 293 of Stand Up. I have a very special show for you. Joining me today, journalist, speaker, author, musician, Celeste Headlee, journalist, professor, public speaker, and media critic Jeff Jarvis, and my mom and dad joined me and also went viral on Twitter last night. I'm Pete Dominic. Time to stand up with me right now. Hello, my friends, and welcome to the show. Normally, right here at the top, I do a big, robust news segment and what I call a news dump, which is more succinct and concise. But I am abandoning format today because I got caught up with all kinds of things today. First, I got notice that I had to take the awning down off the shed that I work and broadcast this podcast from every day. My Trump-loving, Pete Dominic-hating neighbor reported me to the town saying I was doing illegal construction here. Of course, the town came over, so I was doing no construction, left, came back a week later and said, hey, man, we saw that your awning was a little too close to the property line. You're going to have to take that down. That was back in November. I hadn't heard anything, got the notice today, got up on it and started taking it down and decided I would take a bad situation and turn it into a good situation, but it took up a lot of time for me to have to do that today, not complaining, and it just means there's no big robust news dump today. Didn't have the time to prepare it all, but I do have an excellent show planned for you today. I had an amazing conversation with the brilliant Celeste Headlee, and that is the second, or I should say really the third segment today, third interview today. But you're not going to, please, I know the order I put these in, but don't miss, and I highly recommend you listen to my conversation with Celeste Headlee. Then I checked in with Jeff Jarvis, Professor Jeff Jarvis, because as soon as news broke that Rush Limbaugh died, I thought he would be a great guy to talk to. We went live on Twitter, and then I shared it here on the podcast. But then also I reached out to my parents last night to just check in because they're getting their second shot of the Moderna vaccine today, and I wanted to check in with them. And I shared a clip of the video, the first 2 minutes of our conversation, and it went crazy last night because Jake Tapper saw it and shared it, and then Rex Chapman, who is also very well known, shared it, but the two of them have like 3.5 million followers on Twitter, shared a video of my parents. And so I was just dying watching that last night. So anyway, the bottom line is I don't get to the news today, but I do have these three great segments and guests joining me. Very happy about all of them. So let me get right to it and throw to my parents, who I reached out to last night because my mom and dad, who were up in Syracuse, are getting their second shot today. I'll check in with them tonight. They will join me at the Hangout, hopefully, if they don't have, if they're feeling okay, because there's some side effects there, as we talk about here at the top. But tonight is the Hangout for every single person who is a subscriber. You get access to the live Zoom happy hour hangout, stand-up happy hour hangout, I call it. It's every Thursday at 8 p.m. I'll have my parents join me and maybe more special guests. Always a lot of fun. But here now, my conversation with Chuck and Mary Dominic from last night. Okay, you ready?
Yeah, we're ready. Yeah.
Dad, do you want to talk about how you look a little while longer?
No, I'm looking in the picture here. I wanted to be a full screen so I could see the whole.
Well, either way, I want to thank you for getting dressed up. You got your best.
No, I don't.
Sweatshirt on.
But you know what I am doing? I've got my clothes laid out for tomorrow.
Oh.
He's so excited about getting that shot.
We're getting our second shot.
He's already got his clothes laid out.
Clothes laid out.
Well, that's
ready.
Got the car is all gassed up, and we're going to start it up early.
He's going to run it all night.
So you are, that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk with you this evening, because tomorrow you are getting your second vaccination.
Second shot, yep.
Which do you have? Which drug?
Moderna.
Yeah,
Moderna. What do they say about that, Mom?
Well, I think that more people are having side effects from Moderna than from Pfizer, but we're not going to have them at all because we don't need to. we're fine.
You've chosen not to go with the side effects?
Right.
Yeah.
I did not.
Both did, actually. It was a joint decision.
Opt out? I didn't realize that's how it worked. I didn't know you could do that. Well, why would anybody ever opt in for a side effect?
A lot of people are there because it's a whole thought process that people go through.
Mm-hmm. It's an attention thing.
Yeah, they want to be. They want people to feel sorry for them, and we really don't give a shit.
Some of the side effects are not good at all.
Yeah.
So it's possible though that you could have an unpleasant day or two, or
yes, it's possible, but it's not likely.
It's better than being dead, though.
Yeah, for sure. Now, speaking of being dead, I'm very excited about you getting that shot. But Rush Limbaugh died today at age 70.
He did.
So
he died.
Got to feel good.
I cried one tear, not one tear.
It's gone.
What is your general philosophy, first to you, Mom, about speaking ill of people who have passed on? Do you have any thoughts about that, regardless if you liked them or not, if they were a good person or a bad person?
If he's a bad person, I don't have anything good to say about him. I'm not shedding a tear. Mm-hmm. I didn't wish him dead, but I'm certainly not crying because he is. Mm-hmm. He was not a good person.
Dad, do you share Mom's general philosophy?
No, I'm just, I wish him dead. I'm glad he is dead. The fact that he's dead doesn't, I mean, I'm not rejoicing. I really don't care, but he's gone now. We don't have to listen. I didn't listen to him anyway, but
your father says dead. He's going to be replaced by someone else.
Yeah, they'll get somebody else.
No better.
I mean, he's dead. Somebody will move in.
Yeah.
When Bill O'Reilly, was it Bill O'Reilly? Yeah, he's gone, and then they put that other guy Waters in. He's annoying as hell. Yeah, and they'll do something for. But Rush Limbaugh he had a huge following, had 20 million followers or whatever it was. So,
did you ever? Never listened to him?
For a couple of minutes at a time, just to see what he was going to say. I haven't heard him in a couple of years. I don't even know where he is anymore on the radio or what. But
he's nowhere anymore.
No, he's dead. He's gone. I wonder what they did with his cochlear implant. I wonder if they give that to somebody else to use.
I think it goes straight to a museum. Probably.
Like the Smithsonian or something like that? Or
what do you think about Donald Trump gave Rush Limbaugh the highest civilian honor, the presidential?
It surprised me.
Ridiculous.
You see the people he let out of jail? Think about it.
He gave the medals, the Medal of Freedom to Rush Limbaugh. He gave honors to several people that certainly didn't deserve them.
Here's an interesting thing about that. He wanted to give it to Bill Belichick.
Yeah, and the football coach, New England Patriots football.
He refused it. I mean, I can't stand the guy, but boy, I've got to say, he really stepped up there. That's amazing. This guy said, "No, I don't want it from you."
Well, getting an award from Donald Trump doesn't seem like.
Well, it's the highest medal you can get as a civilian, and because it was Donald Trump, he says, "No, I don't want it."
Well, yeah, because
that's stepping up.
Somehow, it means he's using his awful criteria to award people, and generally speaking, he awards like domestic abusers and white supremacists. Those are the people that he. So it's like I don't think
nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
Plus,
he also awards cheaters, and Bill Belichick, the New England Patriots coach.
They should have given it to him. Maybe that's why he gave it to him.
What do you guys think of? Did you pay attention, Mom, to the impeachment trial, and did you watch it or pay any attention to it?
I really did not watch it. I read a lot about it, and I'm very disgusted with the 43 Republicans that would not go against Trump. I'm very disgusted with Mitch McConnell, who said we should not have the trial till after the inauguration, and now it's too late. I saw a cartoon that shows two bank robbers walking out of the bank with money, two cops standing nearby saying, "Oh, too bad we didn't get them before they left. Now it's too late."
That's good. That's perfect.
That's quite an analogy.
Dad, did you pay attention to it? Did you watch it?
No, I didn't watch it at all. I didn't really pay much attention. I mean, I knew the outcome. It's like watching a movie that you've seen before,
Sure, yeah.
The Democrats said, "This is how stupid we can be. Look at us." And then they proved it again. And then the Republicans said, "This is how dirty we can be. Look at us." And they proved it again. I mean, it's going to be very interesting because I got thinking about this. 7 Republicans voted against Trump.
Yeah. 7 senators.
They theoretically might not get reelected.
Right.
Which means Democrats could pick up more seats in the Senate.
It's, but you're right. If they get primaried by someone whose campaign is that the moon is made of cheese, some people might say, you know what, I'm not going to go with Cheese Moon guy. I can't either. So I'm not going to vote, or I'll vote for the Democrat.
That what could happen, and it's too bad because those are the Republicans that possibly have a conscience.
Who are those people? Who are Republicans with a conscience?
The 7 that voted against Trump. I'm saying that they possibly have a conscience. I don't know who they are. I don't know.
I thought the Democrats did a really good job laying out the case, but you didn't really pay attention. That was just kind of your general news.
Well, here's what I'm saying. We knew what the case was. The case didn't really change. What I thought would be the smart thing to do, since you did impeach him, okay. He's got to go through the proceedings. I thought they would let the FBI run with this for about 90 days and keep building a strong.
Well, that's what they're doing now. That's what they announced. So they announced.
Yeah, but it has nothing to do with the impeachment.
Yeah, I know, but that's why I'm okay with it. That's like you knew they weren't going to get.
You're okay with it. I'm not. That's okay.
The impeachment managers did an outstanding job.
Yeah.
Raskin was so good.
Yeah.
The lady is she from Hawaii? She's not a congressperson, but she was an impeachment manager.
Virgin Islands. If she was from Hawaii, she would be a congressperson at the state.
Really,
a delegate.
really
Stacey Plaskett. No, but all I'm saying, Dad, is I think it's interesting that, the impeachment hearing is done. They knew they weren't going to get the Senate votes, but they had to do it. And then now they've announced a whole investigation like 9/11 into it and all the things that you want the FBI to do. That's exactly what the Department of Justice will have the FBI do. So you're going to see a big investigation. Today they were, there's people still speculating about
it also has absolutely nothing to do with the impeachment.
No, but it'll have a lot more actual consequence because
I know they're going to do that. Okay. Yeah. I know they're going to do that. They were going to do that whether there was an impeachment or not.
Well,
but the fact is they went into the impeachment knowing they were going to lose. And if they waited 90 days and all this stuff they're doing the investigating on, it might have been such a case that they couldn't vote against it.
Well, how about this? Did you see Joe Biden at the CNN town hall last night?
No, I didn't see that.
Did you hear anything about it?
We don't watch that stuff.
All right. Well, let me ask you this.
I'm still on what's his name? Kanye West and Kanye West and Kim Kardashian. That's the kind of stuff I would be dwelling on.
I know a little bit about it.
Did you hear about that?
Yeah, hold on. We'll get to
change the subject. But did you hear about Kanye West and
Kanye? Say Kanye,
right?
Did you hear what? He's very broken up about this.
I didn't. Yeah, I don't pay attention to that stuff.
Well,
and
that's
who cares?
Yeah, you gotta. That's new. That to me that's real.
He's just joking. It's not. That's not now.
That's where it's at in America today.
Well, I was just going to ask you.
Join in with the people.
Well, I was just going to ask you because Joe Biden has a 63% approval rating, and that's kind of unprecedented. We haven't seen a president with that kind of approval rating, and I wonder if you, in general, I know you're not paying that. I know you're paying more attention to Hollywood gossip, than politics, which. We can do whatever you want, but
thank you.
Yeah,
thank you.
I think Biden is doing a great job so far. He's only been in office for a few weeks, and he's going crazy trying to do things to help.
Yeah,
well, he's working like crazy on the pandemic to get everybody inoculated, get enough vaccine. He's. Did
I tell you we're getting our shots tomorrow?
Yeah, this is the part of our segment that I do with my parents, where it's called. Reading their text messages. Okay, here we go. Dad, yesterday, Monday, actually, you texted me about 2:30 p.m. Did you know that your mom has great disdain for some birds? Question mark.
Yeah, she does, yeah.
What's going on here?
What was that bird?
No, he just likes.
What was that bird?
There are starlings and there are blackbirds, grackles they come and they eat all the food and they're mean. You have starlings and you said they're bullies.
Mm-hmm.
I took a picture of these birds. I didn't know what they were. I took them. They look like little tiny hawks because they're brown and black, brown and dark gray. And I took a picture of them and I texted it to your mom because she wasn't here. And I said, what are these birds? And she said, shoo them away. They're terrible. I hate those birds. Shoo them away. And I took that she hates some birds with a passion. And that's,
I don't know if I said I hate them, but I did tell him to shoo them away.
She wanted me to shoo them away. Yeah. I mean, she doesn't like them if she wants me to.
Yeah. Okay, so the next text from Dad, and we'll go to Mom's, that I wanted to mention here, came from this morning, today, 8:39 a.m.
Yeah.
Pete, baseball cards are booming. Where are yours? Maybe time to sell.
Yeah.
The thing about Dad's text message style, Mom, is he writes almost as if it's like a telegram. It's like, baseball cards are booming. Stop. Where are yours? Stop. Maybe time to sell. Like, he doesn't write. It just kind of disjointed. Anyway, what's going on with the baseball card industry? I don't think my cards are worth much.
Well, I saw where they sold a card for $5.4 million, and I figure we may have a lot of valuable cards there because I know that you've got trunkloads of them. Basically, what I'm trying to do is get them the hell out of my house. I don't care how much you get for them.
Dad's texting me other stuff that I have there that he just wants to go. Hey, weight racks and snowboards from the 90s are going.
Yeah, there's
retro.
Yeah.
Well, I just got to say on the record, collecting baseball cards was a lot of fun for me in the late 80s. And there's a lot of one of the things that you and I did together. You would drive sometimes 45 minutes, an hour to a baseball card show, which would be at like a Ramada Inn, like a hotel. And that was I was great fun for me. And I really enjoyed it. And I saved up to buy certain cards. And we had a lot of fun.
Yeah, you also conned me into buying some for you.
Sure did. Okay, so, Mom, your text message now I want to get to. I want you to elaborate on, please. Let's see. Here it is. Here she is. I think Tommy Tuberville is a funny name.
Yes. And I thought you would come back with something for me, but you didn't even acknowledge it.
Yeah, you know what your mother said? He's got nothing.
I didn't say that.
She said he's got nothing.
Stop. You need to stop.
I have to stop.
You need to stop making up things.
Well, you could have said that.
People will believe them about
me.
You
were thinking it. You said, he's got nothing. He had said that Tommy Tuberville's are funny, and he didn't even answer.
And then what did I write?
I'm trying to find another one.
Then I wrote, you still didn't acknowledge that.
Oh, wow.
Remember that?
Yeah.
Because he had nothing.
You wrote this, Mom.
What?
On January 6th, during the insurrection, you actually, I'm going back into your text. During the insurrection, you wrote, how the fuck can this be happening? I'm nauseated by these terrorists and by Trump telling the protesters to go home after he reminds them that the election was stolen from him. And then I have an egg in my apron pocket. I better get to the kitchen for the cookies. What a bizarre, disjointed thought.
From the insurrection to the apron.
You were all mad at watching the insurrection. You must have realized that you had something in the oven. I'm not sure what happened that day.
Anyway. I must have been making cookies for your father.
Why'd you have an egg in your pocket?
Because I had an apron on with pockets, and I took it out, and then I did something else.
Pockets?
That does seem like a bad idea, Mom. What if the egg cracks while it's in there? Has that ever happened?
Yeah.
I'm not like that. If your father put it in his pocket, it would definitely crack.
Well,
but I'm not like that.
Egg in my pocket. I've never done that.
All right, so finally...
It'd be like pouring coffee into your pocket.
No, I don't think that's...
I put the coffee in my pocket.
I don't think that's the same, Dad. I think you've gone too far.
It's similar.
No, it's not.
I might get off here soon because he's misbehaving. I do not care for this.
I'm just excited
about
Mom,
let's just get him back. I mean, so you put an egg in your pocket while you're baking, but I mean, let's just think about how he is in the kitchen. I mean, he does some pretty bizarre things, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does.
I cook.
He spilled water all over the stove tonight. I'm in the family room and I hear him, Jesus. And he's complaining about all kinds of things happening. I said, what'd you do? I spilled water on the stove, but it's going to get we got to scrub it off and it'll burn on. That's what he said.
Makes stains on the
guys are really Getting in all kinds of trouble.
He takes the dishes out of the drainer and plops them on the counter. Doesn't put them away, just plops them on the counter. That's one of the things.
Yeah.
We eat up later.
How long? Then we're going to make it to 50 years in August.
Yeah, this summer. You guys are planning a big party for us, right?
Yeah, this is the your 50th year anniversary is August.
Are you planning a big party?
August 21st, Mom and Dad celebrate the big 50.
You're gonna throw a big party for us?
If we do have a party, what would you like? What kind of a scenario would you like? I mean, we might still be all masked up. I don't know.
I want to be on a tropical island. We're getting our shots
tomorrow. We're going to be good.
I want the party on the tropical island that I'm going to go to.
Well, that's not going to happen. So why don't you lower your expectations and tell me something that might be reasonable that I could help coordinate?
Well, remember the tent that I arranged for your wedding?
Yeah, the tent that you got for our wedding?
And remember all those tables and chairs and all that stuff that I arranged, that I did all that work for, the steam tables? Mm-hmm. Remember all that?
Yeah, you're a real martyr.
Yeah, well, I was thinking maybe you could arrange for this big party. I was thinking we could have like 150 people. And, it'd be nice if you and Brian would pay for it.
Oh, okay. Sounds good.
Yeah, right.
Would that be nice?
All right. Well, we're going to do
we'll go away somewhere.
Is it weird to do a GoFundMe for that? All right. Finally, what stories have you for me? Anything you wanted to mention here on the end, Mom? I know you usually bring stories of your own to this segment. Things that, or any anecdote from your life, anything you're paying attention to, or anything. Maybe something happened at the grocery store.
I have a story it was in the Washington Post. Mm-hmm. A senior in high school in Bethesda, Maryland, had a Washington Nationals jersey signed by Alex Ovechkin. Mm-hmm. And his mom had given it to him for his birthday, I think when he was 14. Well, she now has Lou Gehrig's disease.
Oh, no.
So he decided to auction it off, and he got about $2,000 to help her pay for her bills. He said things are things. People are more important. Mm. His father has Parkinson's disease.
Good Lord.
His brother left for college in Boston. So this young man, who's a senior in high school, is caring for his mother and his father. His father can't do anything for her. He gives her 10 pills a day along with liquid medicine. He brushes her teeth. He helps her to the bathroom in the night and gives her more medicine. And he's doing all this. He cooks dinner every night of the week, 5 nights a week, and he's doing it all while he's going to school. Now, the team, the people who bought the jersey gave it back to him, and then the team gave him a brand new one. Isn't that nice? That's a feel-good story.
That is a feel-good story. The team is the Washington Nationals baseball team?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's very nice, Mom. That's a nice story. Yeah. I'm thinking of auctioning off some of my baseball cards to pay for your 50th anniversary party.
Yeah. I'll bring him down to your house. I'll get him out of our cellar.
Now, Dad, what's your update? Do you have a story, a scenario, a news?
I just read in the paper that March 23rd, New York State is going to allow indoor stadiums to have a capacity of 25%. So just about the time the college basketball season is done, they can have fans come in. Mm-hmm. Of course, there won't be any more games. Mm. And I don't know why March 23rd was picked, because that's over a month from now. And
is that the beginning of the spring season?
I think that our governor is starting to lose it.
Yeah.
I think he's starting to lose it. He's under a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
A lot of lawsuits.
He seems to be doing that thing where he's like calling people up and saying, "Oh, I'm going to ruin you." Like, he called up a congressman. I don't like that kind of politician.
He's under a lot of pressure because he's denying that these people died on his watch almost. I mean, it's kind of, and it's just getting more and more interesting because now the Republicans are saying they want to impeach him. And it sure looks pretty impeachable to me.
California's governor, too, is in trouble.
Yeah.
And the things going on in Texas with the storm, they're not used to that weather. And these people they're burning things in their house, in their fireplaces to stay warm.
Yeah, I saw that. Somebody was burning
horrific.
A baby gate. Like the...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep an eye on the kid, huh?
No, and they were so cold that they burned the gate, that goes at the top of the stairs. And then the baby, the gate wasn't there, and the baby tumbled down the stairs.
Oh, is that true?
Nope. But that's the kind of consequence that the governor is responsible for, that kind of potential scenario. Yeah, it's hard to be a governor when there's the time of COVID. I mean, there's not a lot of good outcomes. Everybody's seemingly taking a hit for making bad calls.
Although Texas has said all the time that they want to secede, they're now asking the federal government for assistance. And guess who is very compassionate and kind and thoughtful, and he's decided to give them assistance. Our new president.
Yeah. All right, final word, and that word is, how would you describe Ted Cruz in a word? Dad, are you familiar with his work? Ted Cruz, Senator Ted Cruz?
In that guy, I don't know. I mean, he's just, you know the word I would use. I mean,
asshole?
He's an asshole, yeah.
Mom.
He's an asshole. He's an asshole, okay? I mean, I don't know.
I helped him out because, that's his favorite.
That's my word. I mean,
All right.
I say he's a waste of a human body.
Oh, wow. That is really something harsh. I was not expecting.
She took the asshole and used the whole body.
Yeah,
I mean,
that really got it.
It's worse, yeah. The asshole. She's...
All right. Thank you, as always, for joining me. Everybody loves when you do. Good luck tomorrow. We'll check in with you in the aftermath of your second vaccination. After tomorrow, you're going to
want to edit out some of that stuff between the two of us going on.
No, that was okay. We've been talking to Julia and Ava lately.
Yeah.
And they're maturing little ladies. Ava's driving all over the place. She tells me how she's been driving.
Yeah.
Julia's not going to ride with her until she gets her license. She told me today.
Well,
a little nervous.
Yeah.
Ava said, when can I start driving the car with other people in it? And I said, when you're ready. When you're ready.
Yeah.
She said, I think I'm ready. I said, I don't think you are. I don't think anybody's ready. Yeah. It's weird when you're teaching your child to drive, then your own driving is really then under a microscope. And yesterday I was out with both the girls. We were just running around some errands, and I went right into a one-way road, and I was driving right at an oncoming car.
Nice.
Wow. Yep. Well, you told them you did that to show them how irresponsible. If you're irresponsible, what can happen? So I'm sure you did that, and that's what you told.
I quickly changed the subject after that horrific scenario was over. That's for sure.
The car around in a U-turn, he got the hell out of there.
I was like, anybody want a milkshake? All right, guys, I gotta go. Love you. Bye.
Love you. Bye.
Night, Pete.
All right, there they go, Mom and Dad. Chuck and Mary, 50 years, August 21st. I guess we got to do a party for them. Anybody have any ideas? Let me know. And that was so cool that Jake Tapper shared that video, the first 2 minutes of the video of my parents. And I'll post the whole thing maybe on YouTube, youtube.com/standupwithpete if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel yet. I haven't really promoted it. So yeah, Jake Tapper shared it, and so did Rex Chapman, a combined like 4.5 million followers on Twitter. So it was pretty cool to, at the time of this posting this podcast, see that over 100,000 people watched my parents on video. You guys love when my parents join me, and I try not to overplay that card, but they're always so good. I hope you enjoyed that. All right, so, of course, as we talked about, Rush Limbaugh died, and I decided to go live with the great Jeff Jarvis, who is a really well-respected media critic and has quite an impressive career. I first heard him when he was a caller, calling into the Howard Stern show, because Howard always respected his opinion so much on media stuff that he would bring him on the show. And that was the first time I ever heard Jeff Jarvis. Started having him on the Sirius XM show, and then, of course, now on the podcast several times, where he's always a hit. He's the author of What Would Google Do? And Public Parts, How Sharing in the Digital Age Improves the Way We Work and Live. He blogs at buzzmachine.com. Of course, he directs the Center for Entrepreneurial Journalism at the City University of New York Graduate School of Journalism, and he's also, I could talk about Jeff's credits and accolades forever. Professor Jeff Jarvis on Twitter, at Jeff Jarvis. Here we go. You can watch this whole video because we first went live on Twitter and either of our feeds, at Jeff Jarvis, at Pete Dominic. I think I might be live with Jeff Jarvis, but then I just disappeared. So maybe it's just
disappeared. There we go.
Am I back? I just disappear sometimes.
We're on Twitter. I'm going to retweet us right now.
Wow, people are watching us, and this could be a massive disaster. But I really wanted to talk to you, Jeff. I wanted to talk to you right this second. I'm so impulsive, and I reached out and I said, "Can you talk?" Because I really want to talk with you about a couple of things, but specifically because Rush Limbaugh just died, and I thought, well, we'll try to go live on Twitter. And so here we are. I think we're live on Twitter.
We seem to be.
I appreciate you trusting me, and if it goes badly, I hope that you'll make fun of me appropriately.
I only myself to blame for trusting you.
So I just wanted to get your reaction to the death of Rush Limbaugh. You're a guy who's been covering and producing media for a long, long time, and you were the first guy I wanted to ask about it. What are your initial thoughts?
Well, my initial thought was that in the United States, we tend to have a tradition, a norm of not speaking ill of the dead. But for God's sakes, this is an exception. And I fear what media are going to do. They're going to think of, the funny moments with Rush selling his chairs and that kind of stuff. No, everything that we've ended up in the last 4 years is the fault of Rush Limbaugh together with Rupert Murdoch, both in the news today. And so Rush is an awful person. He destroyed the country. He destroyed lots of parents and families and aunts and uncles. He led to the mass takeover of broadcast media by the far right, radio, and then Murdoch, of course, did TV. And I'm curious what you think about this. I was going to call into Howard Stern the other day. I haven't done this yet, but I had a thought. If Howard had not been hounded off of broadcast terrestrial radio by the FCC, would we have had Donald Trump? Would there have been another voice for testosterone-filled men out there to listen to other than Rush Limbaugh, other than that ilk? Would it have made a difference? I don't know, proving the negative. But there's no doubt that talk radio in the United States went down to the gutter, and Rush Limbaugh dragged it right down into hell with him.
How did he change radio? He was pretty much one of the very first, the pioneers. They got rid of, I guess, the fairness doctrine. He was able to broadcast in all of these smaller markets. But, I mean, I want to bash him all day, and I love what I'm seeing on social media. And we have to talk about his horrific legacy. But I do just want to ask, because I think it's important, why he was so influential, I want to say so quickly or at the beginning.
I'm not sure. I think two things. One, he was a showman. He went to the extremes, and extremists love extremists. So that's, they all work together. And two, he was a good business person. And in fact, he and Howard were the two people who really syndicated across the country. Now, Howard Stern would say that he invented the model and Limbaugh copied it, but Limbaugh copied it to great end for his business. And he was everywhere. He was absolutely everywhere.
So he then transformed an entire generation, or now more, of Americans thinking about politics, about government, and he absolutely took over and transformed the Republican Party. I think there can be no debate about that. He was the leading light, a radio host who had no idea or no interest or consequences when it came to governing or policy. He just saturated America's airwaves with conspiracies, with racism, and found any single marginalized community he could, you name it, blacks, Hispanics, immigrants, women, Native Americans, and pounded them into the ground and created the grievance. How much responsibility does he have for leading the Republican Party to Donald Trump?
You said it all. You really just said it all right there. That's everything that he did. And he exploited fear, right? He pumped up and ignited and exploited fear, and he made people fearful of each other for no good reason. And, it's been debated for some time whether radio was innately conservative. And I'm not sure whether there's any such thing. I'm not sure whether that's true or not. Because you did have FDR and fireside chats and so on. But there's something about radio and complaint Hey, what are we doing right now? We're complaining, right? And so he turned complaint into an evil art.
Honey, turn on the grievance machine. Turn on the grievance machine.
There's my rush to make me feel awful.
Yeah.
And that's what's so amazing about it is that you think that people would want to hear things that make them feel good. You know, Paul Harvey, page 2. And here's another heartwarming story from the heartland, right? No, they wanted to be angry and pissed and scared and hateful. And he fed into that in weird ways. You know, you said before, Pete, that he affected a generation. Usually when we use that kind of phrase, we're talking about youth, but this was the opposite, right? He affected all the old people in the country. He affected all of our fathers and grandfathers and uncles and tore up families as a result.
Absolutely. There can be no doubt about that. And he did it all from his studio. I mean, he just sat there every day, day in and day out, and poured this bile into people's brains. And they all, Jeff, I've always said this, they all kissed the ring. Reagan on down to Newt Gingrich, obviously to Trump, who gave him the Presidential Medal of Freedom. I mean, who never, Rush Limbaugh, who never did anything for anybody, never sweat, never. I mean, like, he didn't really do anything at all to get that, unlike everybody else. And so I think that's different than the liberal left. There's never been a media outlet or influential person who the leadership, much less the president, had to kiss the ring. That, to me, was always one of the biggest dynamics, and no one had more power or influence than Rush Limbaugh.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And part of the problem was that there are gushy loser leftists, of which we are, proud members, would often say, where is our Fox News? Where is our Rush Limbaugh? Right. So we both well remember Air America. And, why didn't that? Well, let me ask your theory. Why didn't that work?
I think that the difference between liberal and conservative talk radio is liberal is more nuanced, more granular, and thus more boring. And that's why when I worked at the Colbert Report and the Daily Show, I wanted to try to take that to the radio. The only liberal talk radio that's really done well is that has a lot of satire, a lot of comedy involved in it. And it still doesn't do as well because we still don't load the airwaves with fear and divide people with these crazy grievances, although that I think is changing now a lot. I really do. But I think that's why Air America could never succeed and make the amount of money that it needed to make. And there were other business issues, I think, with their plan, having this big conglomerate, because individual liberals like Thom Hartmann have always done well. But I think it's just they weren't the fear machine. They weren't the fear machine. And the audience, liberal audience, is so much more diverse with different types of people. And the right-wing radio audience is filled with, obviously, mostly entirely white folks living in more rural areas. And that's the signal they get, too, on AM.
Yeah, we fight with each other. They fight all the others.
Yes.
We fight internally more. We argue internally more. We have more about our own orthodoxy. And they glommed onto an orthodoxy. And that was that. The other interesting thing to me is the kind of the trucker motif. And you having served Sirius for some years, I'm sure you had a lot of truckers in your audience. But it's interesting to me that you go back to the Southern strategy of Nixon. That was, Southern. I'll be blunt about it. Southern bigots and Northern, rich people, right?
Yep.
And but then it changed at some point, right? Then it became Northern labor people, less educated white people, the country around, non-urban people, and that I think was in part because of talk radio. I think that was a Limbaugh shift there in the demographics of not just the Republican Party, but the right as a whole.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I mean, his influence it's everybody is going to try to figure out today how influential he was, and anybody who says the most will be right. And when you read about, I'm reading this obituary a lot of people are referencing at Huffington Post, which I think is really good. And when you start to think, you get so outraged by what he said about black people, and then that can only be replaced by your outrage about what he said about gay people and about women and even Native Americans. But boy, did he had such a loud voice on so many issues, but there seems to be like no policy issue that maybe he had more influence on than anything that was anti-gay, Jeff. Although we could talk about women and minorities of any category, but man, was he awful to gay people. And so people are talking today about, don't talk ill about the dead. Man, he had like a game show when people would die of AIDS. I was reading about it. It's horrible.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'll talk ill about the dead when they, while living, talked ill about the living.
Right.
He was just a hateful man, not just in the adjectival form, right, of somebody to hate, but just so filled with hate and bile. But the thing is, he's such a cynic and such a nihilist. I don't know, if you sat down with beer with Rush Limbaugh, a frightening thought, I would imagine he probably would have said, nah, I really don't. The gays don't really bother me, but I used them. They were convenient. I think it was the ultimate cynic in that way. Although
I always feel like when people say that, what they're saying is, on an individual one-to-one basis, I got no problem with black folks. I treat women just equally, and I got a lot of gay friends. But that's different.
Well, I'm not saying that he wasn't homophobic and awful.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is I don't think that he necessarily would have said they're the ruin of all civilization. But what the heck, if I say that, I'll get more ratings and I'll stomp up the troops. I think he used it. Yeah. He played a game even himself.
Which is always
which is almost right away worse.
Yes, of course. It's always the least respectable thing when someone says something on the public through a megaphone that they don't actually really believe. And of course, therein lies the success of a lot of people on the right that didn't actually support Donald Trump, but they went to their microphones every day and ranted and raved because that was the best way to make money.
And what does Lindsey Graham actually believe? What does Ted Cruz actually believe? What does Hawley actually believe? I have no idea. I don't really care. Because it's what they do matters.
They just believe in themselves, just in making money and promoting themselves. That's all those politicians you just named, and certainly Rush Limbaugh. That's all they care about, seemingly.
But here's the thing that disturbs me these days is what we're going to hear over the next couple of years is how America was brought to ruin by social media. Facebook messed us all up. Twitter messed us all up. And Facebook and Twitter and the people thereon have problems, sure. But no. We were in this hellhole long before Mark Zuckerberg was shaving. It was because of Rush Limbaugh.
Yes, it's such a great point because when everybody's going back and looking at Rush Limbaugh's entire career, which began in the early 80s, I think, right, and then really took off in the 90s, and he did this. He played the same songs every day. And that absolutely radicalized an entire generation. And to some extent, he lost the ring. He never lost the ring. He never lost his influence. I think he was always lying about his numbers. But his destruction of critical thinking and generalizing and his form of entertainment created Alex Jones, I feel like, Jeff, who took the ring, which created QAnon, which has now left us with this Republican Party in complete disarray about which end is up on any, I think, comprehensive truth.
Well, I have a heretical opinion, which is that the TV equivalent was Oprah Winfrey. That her show, I know, lightning shall strike me.
Wow.
She went trash TV first, right? Because she was competing with Phil Donahue, and the way to compete with Phil Donahue is lovely, gushy Phil Donahue, the liberal of liberals, right? She got into those awful shows a lot sooner. And then at some point, I think when she saw enough copycats come along, and there were lots and lots of copycats, she suddenly changed her mind. And she didn't ever actually fully confess her sins. She didn't fully recant, but she backed away. I was supposed to be on her show for that moment when she was going to say kind of, well, I've changed my ways here. And I refused to be used by her. I wouldn't go on it.
Wow.
But it's interesting how my point here is that it takes one person to destroy a norm. And then others rush in behind and amplify that. Rush Limbaugh did that on radio. Everybody rushed in behind him. Oprah, to an extent, did that on TV, but then she pulled back and TV pulled back, I think. Donald Trump obviously did that with politics and the presidency. And the irony now is that it's the conservatives who are destroying institutions and the liberals who want to conserve institutions. But Rush Limbaugh had nothing sacred about him. Everything was material for his hate routines or for selling merchandise.
A lot of people will wonder what comes next, and I just think that's a dumb question. We already know.
Screw 'em.
We know. It's all there. There's a massive landscape of people talking. There's millions and millions of people hosting shows. So anything you want, it's available. And
here we are.
Yep, here we are. But I mean, in terms of terrestrial radio, I suppose you could argue what's next there. And I mean, Jeff, let's spend 1 minute. Terrestrial radio is going the way of record players and Blockbuster video.
How long since gone? I mean, since Howard left terrestrial, I listened for a while to NPR stations, but then truth is I listened to Sirius, and now I listen to podcasts, and I haven't listened to terrestrial radio in a long time. Do you listen to it?
No, but I think that the way I look at it is the people that are still listening to it are just people who can't find a better signal, so they're very rural, or they're so old they have no idea how to work a podcast. There's no interest. My dad doesn't have any interest in learning new technology, so he's not going to find some of these newer things. But those people, as they go, or as they're no longer listening and certainly not buying things that the advertisers are selling, they're not as we can find comfort in that. Is that the Rush generation will die off? Yeah. Unfortunately, their children are now on Parler. Brett Bozell, to me, is one of the most hateful people I know. He was the founder of the Parents Television Council. He was one of the people who hounded Howard Stern off the radio. Well, guess what news just came out today? Yeah. Brett Bozell's son was arrested for his activities at the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. Parenting goes really well from the Parents Television Council there, right? Young Bozell's grandfather, Brett Bozell's father, was a speechwriter for McCarthy. Right. And the crap doesn't fall far from the bird and the tree. Right. It's just amazing. And so I don't think we can comfort ourselves that Limbaugh is gone. Ding dong, the witch is dead. And radio will change. It kind of won't matter because they are elsewhere. And this is where social media does, in fact, play a role. Yes. If you read everything that he said, if you read this, for example, the Huffington Post, I think, again, has a great obituary, and you still say he's a great man, what does that make you? I mean, there's not a group of people, marginalized people, that he didn't attack in such a brutal way, from people who are dying of AIDS to African Americans to Native Americans, immigrants. I mean, he is such a white supremacist too, and it was so blatant all the time. And so I can't say enough bad things.
I went to Google News today, and of course, what was the lead story? Rush Limbaugh dead. And what did the algorithm choose as the place to report that to us? Fox News.
Is that your algorithm, or is that generally?
That's theirs.
Well, let's talk about one more issue dealing with algorithms. That's how I'm pivoting to the Google story, Jeff. I mean,
we also have Rupert Murdoch to pivot to, yes.
Amazing segue. Google, here's the headline. Google, in New York Times, Google is suddenly paying for news in Australia. What about everywhere else? Path-breaking legislation show that even a small nation can get the tech giant to bend, but the United States seems unlikely to follow. What is this story about, and why is it such a big deal?
So I'm having palpitations of anger today about this. What was happening was that Australia had legislation called a media code, in which they were going to insist that the platforms, in essence, pay for the privilege of linking to news sites. That you're using our news. Well, no, in fact, Google was taking a headline or a snippet and using that to send audience to the news site. In any rational market, the publishers would have paid Google, but Google early on chose not to charge for links in search. So they didn't create a market value for it. So the publishers went to their politicians who were in their pockets. Publisher one, Rupert Murdoch, politicians, those in power. And they have this legislation, and Google had threatened to pull out of Australia entirely. And but they negotiated. They had started something called Google News Showcase. And they were licensing entire articles for this showcase. And it was a way that they could pay bakshish, bribery money, blackmail to the publishers, so the publishers would lay off on the political fight. And so it kind of worked in Australia just now, and you could say, but it upsets me greatly because it shows that media blackmail works. It makes Rupert Murdoch richer. It has a major impact on the structure of the web. Tim Berners-Lee said to the Australian politicians that to do anything to muck up the freedom of the link is to ruin the web. And it, as with every moment of regulation thus far in Europe or elsewhere in the world, when you try to take power away from the platforms, you only end up giving them more power, because now Google has more power of God to decide which news sites get money and which ones don't. And it's going to be the big old ones like Murdoch that do. And now people are thinking in Canada of doing the same thing, and the EU of doing the same thing. And it's just a negotiating ploy in which my people in journalism are not admitting their conflict of interest in cashing in their political capital to get politicians to pass this kind of protectionist legislation. Now, interestingly, just before we got on the air, now known as Twitter, Facebook made a different decision. Facebook decided to pull news out of Facebook in Australia. So they're not going to allow either publishers or users to put news up on Facebook. Now, the good interpretation of that is that Facebook is standing up for principle for the web and saying we're not going to be blackmailed. The cynical view of that, which I know many will have, and we'll see which comes true, is that Facebook says, you know what? News gets us in trouble all the time. We want to go back to parties and puppies. No news sounds like a really nice world for us. We won't get crap all the time. We won't have to hire 30,000 people to cut out the junk. Just puppies and parties, folks. That's all we want. We're Facebook. That's where we started, is how to get laid. And we want to go back to that, right? And that's a cynical view. I could go either way. But the point is that Australian politicians with Murdoch mucked this up. And one more thing is that I got really disappointed. I love The Guardian dearly. It's my favorite worldwide news site. I used to write for them. I used to be a media columnist for them. I used to consult for them. I've had friends there for years. But The Guardian went in league with the devil Murdoch on this. And they backed the same legislation as he did in a cynical attempt to get some of Google's money. And I'm sorely disappointed in them. I'm sorely disappointed in that. I'm disappointed today in Google. And any day when Rupert Murdoch wins anything is a bad day for me.
Well, we'll talk to you the day that Rupert Murdoch dies, too. But
I'm not sure that's ever going to happen.
Yeah, I know. I think we're all going to die first. But I think he's going to live on forever. As a matter of fact, his droid body. Just real quick, Jeff, how should it work? Who should be paying who so that you get a wider, broader, more objective selection of information that is in the public's interest?
I think it's up to the public, number one. But the problem, if we just go with paywalls, then we redline journalism for the privileged only. I think advertising needs to be reinvented. It can still help support news. There are other media streams, revenue streams that can support news, events and commerce and other things. But, let's look at this case where, it sounds like I'm dancing on their grave if I say don't take Google's money. But where's the money actually going to go, Pete? Well, in the U.S. or in Canada, let's say Canada, where it might go next. The major chain there is owned by a hedge fund. That money's not going to go to journalism. It's going to go to the hedge fund owners. If it ever happened in the U.S., most every chain in this country is owned by a hedge fund. Tribune Company just today got taken over by Alden Global, which is the most rapacious hedge fund in news.
Yeah, I should have booked you just to talk about how consequential that buy was.
Tribune was already pretty much screwed up anyway. It was borked, but now it's just double borked. All in full disclosure, Alden, when it used to be called, the company used to be called Digital First Media. I was on a digital advisory board with a good CEO who was trying to reform them and then left. But Alden does what a hedge fund does. Hedge funds suck out cash from an operation, and they're not going to invest in innovation. And so if any money comes from Google or Facebook to news in the U.S., it goes right to the hedgies. It doesn't go to the journalists. So don't fool yourselves, folks, that there's some great entitlement. The problem I have with the news industry is they think entitlement is a business model. Well, we should get paid. People miss us. Canada, every paper in Canada had a blank front page that basically really said at the bottom, you'll miss us when we're gone. Jesus. In the United States, trust in news has been falling since the 70s.
Yeah.
People don't like their news. We've got to reinvent journalism entirely, ground up. And the sooner, this is going to sound awful, but the sooner the old goes away, the sooner we can get a new.
Well, you are one of the main players influencing that in so many different ways, and that's why folks should be supporting everything that you do. And I really appreciate you joining me, as always, to talk about all of this, to make sense of it, to help understand. And Jeff Jarvis, I can't thank you enough. And also for experimenting with me in this new software and trying to go live on Twitter. I think it worked.
I think it did. We'll see if people are making fun of us there. They probably are.
Hopefully. Jeff Jarvis, thank you very much, my friend. Good to see you. All right, check him out at buzzmachine.com, at Jeff Jarvis. Tell him you heard him here on the show, and thank you very much, Jeff. Always a great pleasure to be in a conversation with him. And finally today on Stand Up with Pete Dominick Daily, that's I'm going to start calling it now, Stand Up with Pete Dominick Daily, I've got a great conversation with a brilliant award-winning journalist, professional speaker, best-selling author of We Need to Talk, How to Have Conversations That Matter. Also, more recently, Do Nothing is her last book. Do Nothing, How to Break Away from Overworking, Overdoing, and Underliving. I highly recommend both of those books. She's had a 20-year career in public radio, and her work and insights have been featured in pretty much every media outlet in the world, and I'm so happy that I got to have another conversation with Celeste Headlee, whose TEDx Talk has been seen by over 30 million people, titled 10 Ways to Have a Better Conversation. We cover a lot of ground in this conversation. We had it before Rush Limbaugh died. I think we talked on Monday or Tuesday of this week. She's on Twitter at Celeste Headlee, and her website is celesteheadlee.com. Here is a brilliant woman, and I think I asked her pretty good questions. I hope you like it. There she is, Celeste Headlee. Welcome back. I am so happy to have you here to ask questions to again. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me on again.
Happy 2021. You wrote this amazing book about doing nothing and then being more productive. And I wonder if you think at all about like New Year's resolutions or making changes at the beginning of a month or a week or anything like that. Do you have any habits or any thoughts about that?
I think that you probably shouldn't make some big mile marker if you want to create a habit. I mean, and the reason I say that is because it shouldn't be a big deal. If you understand that the habit forming is inevitably incremental and it's the 2 steps forward, 1 step back, then it doesn't matter if you start on a Monday or not. You're not going to have a perfect week. It's funny, when I was when I lived in Detroit, I was for quite a while an advisor, a coach for e-diets, and I would try to help people completely reform their habits all the time. And one of the biggest mistake people made was like, okay, it's a new year. I'm going to work out for an hour a day and I'm going to stop eating sugar. And I'd be like, no, you won't. That's not going to happen. But hey, if you could work out 10 minutes a day and you could like cut back on your sugar. And I think that that's the same thing with any kind of news revolution. We tend to make these big goals. And I think you're going to be better off if you make small ones.
What do you make of this whole industry, which I suppose your book, Do Nothing, would kind of fit into maybe this, self improvement. But there's all these people, YouTube channels and podcasts and books as well. I'm sure you've been invited on because of that book and for other reasons. Do you look at other people's books and all these other resources that seem to be, I don't know, I guess self-improvement and self-help has been a pretty big deal, pretty big industry for a long time. But now there's all these workshops and YouTube channels. And I wonder how much attention you pay to some of these new wave self-helpers.
Not much attention. I mean, I think of Do Nothing as sort of an anti-self-help book. It's like, that book is like saying, you're okay. You're fine. I remember, I don't know if you have ever read that book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
I think it's one of those books I have on the bookcase, but didn't read.
So So at the very beginning of that book, Stephen Covey was talking about the difference between the personality ethic and the character ethic. That the personality ethic was interested in sort of checklists. Here's what you need to do if you're going to be a successful person. And if you do these particular things, that makes you, I don't know, cool, an influencer or whatever it may be. I have a podcast. What are the 10 things I need to do to get my podcast more attention? And his point was that almost never works. Like, you can't replicate what someone else has done to gain success. You need to have character. You need to find out about yourself, who you are, and rely on sort of the basic underlying principles of humankind. And that's sort of the way I view the self-help book. I don't hate self-help books. I obviously would much rather people be in a growth mindset than a fixed mindset. But I do think this idea that you have to constantly be improving just has people in this case where they're always becoming and never being. I just wish that people would at some point stop buying the next self-help book and be like, okay, that one I just read was great. I'm going to implement that for a year or two and be who I am with these new habits. Who am I if I wake up every morning and make my bed? It's like people, we tend to take no time figuring out who the new person is that does that stuff.
That is really interesting and smart. Growth versus fixed mindset. That basically means the type of person who wants to get up every day and take steps forward and learn new things and get better at the things they already are interested in, versus kind of a fixed mindset, which is, I'm just making this up. I want you to explain a little bit more, but the idea of a person the type of person who says same shit, different day, which always irks the hell out of me, or just doesn't have a mindset that they can improve. What are the differences? What is the growth versus fixed mindset?
That's kind of it. It's a it began as a psychological term. For example, somebody could think, somebody with a fixed mindset thinks, well, I'm not patient, right? And so if you're not a patient person, then you don't work on being more patient, because that's not who you are. Someone with a fixed mindset actually struggles to deal with mistakes. They struggle to come back after a failure because they think people are certain ways. They have trouble with other people's redemption. They have trouble imagining that someone can be different. Have you ever, I don't know how your parents are, but if one of my siblings suddenly liked a food they hadn't liked as a child, this blew my mother's mind, right? You loved corn. You've always loved corn, right? You can kind of think of that as the fixed mindset. There's no such thing as a person who just is always going to love corn, right? I mean, probably not. But the growth mindset is somebody who's like, this is how I feel today. This is a mistake is just part of my journey. To be truthful, there's not really, most of us are not one or the other. Most of us are growth mindset in this way. Like, we think, I want to learn how to play the guitar. And we're totally patient with ourselves learning to play the guitar and understanding that we have mistakes. But if we think of ourselves, say, as a good spouse or good partner, and that's who we are. If we think this is our identity, this is my identity, I'm a good husband, good wife, good whatever, then that can be our fixed mindset. Then it can be very challenging if somebody busts that myth or says you just screwed up.
That is the growth mindset, or something to do with exercise or certain type of film or literature, much less a personality characteristic. That's really very interesting. But most important, I think that last comment you made about the relationships. Yes, I'm a good husband means that I don't screw up. And I'm always on the offensive to try to do the right thing and listen. That also holds me back because I'm not always a good husband. That's what you're saying. And I absolutely love it. I mean, that's what I'm hearing. Is that
That is absolutely what I'm saying. You're not. And the fixed mindset would prevent you. Eventually, your fixed mindset is going to hold you in place while life and the people around you are trying to help you grow. And eventually you will get further and further away from good husband, right? Because you're stuck and life is moving on. So that at this moment in time, whenever this was, good husband may have been who you were, but more likely what you did. And then good husband got further as you stuck in place. So life and the experiences around you, the things people tell you, the things that you learn, they're trying to help you grow and evolve. And once you latch onto an identity, you're in trouble.
How do I be a better husband?
Listen.
Well, you know, the one that I was joking with the question because you don't know me well enough. You don't know my relationship well enough. But that is a great answer in general and for relationships. But one of the things gender wise, I did have a breakthrough moment where my wife had so often and had gotten so angry with me in a conversation, and she would always end up with this refrain, I can't talk to you. And it would be so upsetting to me because that's all I do is talk to people for a living. And finally, I realized the problem was she didn't want me to talk back. She just wanted to vent. She didn't need me to fix anything, but it does seem like, and I talk with a lot of men about this, we hear a problem, especially with our partner, and we want to fix it, when in effect, all my wife wanted was for me to just hear her and listen and maybe acknowledge whatever the frustration is. And that seems like such classic relationship advice, but men really do make that mistake. Well-intentioned, I will say. I'm trying to help you. Why are you getting mad at me? Because I don't need you to help me. I just need you to hear me.
Oh, absolutely. You know, I'm a volunteer with the crisis text line. And one of the things that's hardest to do, because they say, you're not trying to solve anybody's problem. Do not give anyone advice. Do not solve anything for this person. Basically, your responses are going to be in a few categories. They are going to be, wow, that sounds tough. You're doing better than you think you are. You got this. And can I direct you to some resources of people who might help you? That's basically it. And you would be stunned at how effective that is, at how many people come away just by forcing them to articulate the problem, articulate what they're going through. They're problem solving. They solve the problem. I'll say, who in your life can you talk to about this? And their first answer will be nobody. I have nobody I can talk to. And I go, wow, really? None of your friends, nobody in your family? That's horrible. And then they'll say, well, I do have this one person. Or I'll say, is there anything that has ever worked for you to distract you from your problems, even for a few minutes, just to give you some relief? And they'll say no. And then I'll be like, wow, really? No music, no walking your dog, nothing. And they'll say, oh, well, actually, I like to draw. So just basically through the questions and by reflecting back what you're hearing, which is essentially good listening, they're doing the problem solving.
Celeste, that's so great. I mean, by the way, like, what don't you do? I mean, you wrote this book about, do nothing and it seems like you have every time I'm following you and looking at you and like today preparing an interview, I'm like, this woman is so multi-talented, faceted with so many different interests, and you can host a public radio conversation, you can perform, you can give a talk, you can interview, and in this case, it sounds like you're listening, you're volunteering at the crisis text line to listen. What is that? And why do you do it?
The crisis text line is just a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week service where there's always a human being on the other end.
And you're texting?
They're texting. This is not therapy. There are lots of therapists who volunteer, but it's not therapy, obviously. It's basically just trying to help people reach a moment of calm. You're in crisis. Let's help you find calm. That's it.
Why do you do it?
Actually, I started doing it after I wrote Do Nothing, when I was doing all that research on helping other people. And I kept thinking to myself, okay, so what is it that I can help with? Like, my schedule is so variable. Yeah. Like, my skill set it's kind of focused. So what is it can I do? And I landed on this because I get to make my own schedule, and my particular skill set of being a good listener and being talented verbally, like you. It fits into this. I mean, I think it's just a matter of finding your own volunteer work can be a little bit of a detective task, right? You're trying to figure out, okay, there's tons of volunteer opportunities out there. You can find one.
Yeah, I'm really interested in this one. I mean, I'll just be completely honest. Like, I have this thing now where I just love being in my shed. I love being in this space. And the pandemic, outside of the horror and the death, has been good to me because I don't love going anywhere right now in my life where I'm at. It's not true all the time. I mean, I do, but the idea of volunteering from the shed is an interesting idea to me. But yeah, what? Just one more question on that. What kinds of things do people say on the crisis text line? Because I wonder how you name a crisis. I bet you, myself, and other people listening would not even realize that something qualifies as a crisis, and we're just trying to deal with it or not deal with it. What is a crisis? I mean, it comes to mind like suicide.
So we do get a lot of people who are thinking about suicide. You get some serious ones, people who are dealing with abuse, people who are doing the self-harm. But frankly, you get people like a teenager who feels completely overwhelmed in school and can't tell their parents. That's a crisis when you're 14, right? Yeah. You get somebody whose parents are divorced and one of their parents said, I want to make a clean break. I'm not going to have visitation, right? That's a huge crisis for a young person, especially. So the crises sometimes are really big. Sometimes they seem minor, but, I'm almost admire people who come when the crises are minor, because this is somebody who's very aware of themselves and what gets them derailed. And this is someone who has their warning signs are very sensitive. And they're like, this is the beginning. Like, I need to handle this now, or it's going to get to the point where I'll be overwhelmed. Like, that's really admirable when somebody detects the beginning of a slippery slope.
Yeah, having that self-awareness, that mindfulness that's a great point. I want to think about that more as how it relates to me or others. Is there a number or anything? Is that a national thing? Should we mention that right now or put it in the show notes?
It's international. Like, if you look up crisis text line, you'll get to it. Yeah.
So I wanted to talk to you about another issue that I think most folks are struggling with, which is paying attention to the news and the world around them and allowing that to affect their own personal lives and day-to-day work. This question is kind of selfish for me because I pay so close attention to the news and do a podcast each and every day. But I think everybody, certainly folks who listen to my show and pay attention to the news, are affected by the news. But I also feel flip when I talk about it because a lot of things actually don't directly affect me or my family, but I'm still very concerned about them. Certainly people that are members of more marginalized communities, living in poverty, etc., are more affected by day-to-day decisions, and they might not even know it. So my question to you is, how do you know everything, Celeste, that's happening in the world day to day and not allow it to influence your interactions with other folks, how you're feeling about yourself, getting things done? Is there an exercise, a firewall, or a way to think about how to think about the news and day-to-day issues that seemingly are terrifying and not allow them to affect you and your day and your life and your family, et cetera?
So I'll explain this in a couple ways. The first is with actually articulating how much news you think you should absorb. So in other words, we don't make that intentional or thoughtful, our consumption of news. We just sort of absorb it through our pores. We click on a link and it takes us to a story, and then we click on another link and it takes us to a story in the Atlantic, which takes us to a story in the New Yorker, which takes us to a story, all over the place. I would say sit down and actually say to yourself, which are the most trusted sources I have? And those are the ones I'll check every day. But I'm not going to keep clicking links. The other thing I would say is that what we're talking about in terms of this self-awareness and understanding when you're actually beginning to feel stress, when your brain is becoming soaked in cortisol is the time to walk away, because you're aware that it doesn't directly affect you. It's important to stay connected, and it's a really good thing to care about issues that affect other people. At the same time, you are of no use to anyone if you're stressed out. Zero. So you have to be self-aware. The other thing I would say is that you're not, you, Pete Dominick, you are not responsible for knowing all of the news. In fact, that is just not the way Homo sapiens work.
Jake Tapper knows all of it.
No, he doesn't.
He knows everything. Well, then John King does.
Nope. It's in his notes in his teleprompter. He has an earpiece in where someone's whispering to him. I know, I've been there trying to look smart. The thing is that there's this thing called transactivity, and it is the way human brains work. We work as a team, and the thing I want to point to especially is transactive memory. So oftentimes one of the ways it gets in the way of people being efficient at work or working well in a team is they try to know everything themselves, right? Everybody, if somebody doesn't know how to use the copier, you'll be like, you've been here how long? Learn how to use the copier. Well, not everyone needs to know how to use the copier. Actually, that's a waste of brain space. One person needs to know how to use the copier. One person needs to know how to use the travel portal. We need to allow other people to be part of our memory banks so that we're not all sourcing it here. Some of that information is stored in books. Some of it's stored on the internet. Some of that information is stored in other people's brains. So allow other people to know some of that stuff. And when you need to know it, you can ask them, but use their brains as a repository of information rather than feeling that you need to know it all.
That's great advice. I've never heard of that, transactivity. You have thoughtful answers to everything that I ask based often on research and data, which is just another reason why I love talking to you, because you yourself have been a learner and a curious person. How would you describe the type of person you are that I want to emulate? Like, what are you? What kind of person are you? Do labels fit someone like you? This curious intellectual person that you strike me as?
I mean, I guess I don't know if I've thought about that very much. I mean, one of the things that comes to mind for me is how lucky I was to have grown up with people who were smarter and better than I was, right. Because it just instills in you a kind of humility. And I don't mean humble, I mean actual humility, not like self-effacing, because I grew up in a family with a capital G genius, right? There's books written about him. There's courses taught about him. And so in a way, it kind of relieved the pressure. That's the genius in the family. And, I can kind of be who I want in a way, but also I don't have to strive to impress people because I'm not going to blow anybody away with the force of my intellect. So I guess in a way, growing up that way, I think was a huge blessing. I mean, it made me doubt myself. I think it's funny. I was talking to Adam Grant about this. His new book is fantastic, by the way. It's called Think Again. I think imposter syndrome, which I've suffered from my whole life, he really gets a bad rap. I mean, I think that I've never had imposter syndrome that crippled me. I've never thought, oh my God, I can't do anything. I've been paralyzed by doubt, but I doubt myself all the time. And has gotten me into the habit of constantly seeking out other information. My team jokes all the time because every time I have to decide something, I put out a Google Doodle. I have everybody vote all the time. They tease me about it all the time. And in a way, if we're talking about who I am, that's sort of who I am. I am somebody who seeks advice all the time.
Well, maybe that's why I'm so impressed. I actually do have you on a pedestal. I've watched your career for a long time, and I've always thought very highly of your intelligence, your ability to interview people and ask just the right question all the time. I'm most impressed with that kind of intellectual curiosity, I think. So for whatever that's worth. But
thanks.
Yeah, of course. I wanted to talk with you just a little bit about current events too, and because you're a smart person, a thoughtful person who has, I think, should be on any panel, any thoughtful panel talking about politics, much less hosting it, of course. And I wonder how you look at the severity of January 6th and the insurrection. How do you articulate how important that day was, that incident was, and you can talk about what led up to it, because I feel like it's a very important day and action to talk about, and I feel like it's more, and maybe you disagree, but more the beginning of something less than I think a lot of us, including myself, was thinking of at the end of something. What was January 6th? What is the insurrection? How do you look at it?
I mean, I agree with you. I think January 6th will be most significant because of what comes after. The apathy of the Republican Party, for example. January 6th is such a tragedy for me. It really is.
A what? A strategy?
A tragedy.
Oh, sorry.
A tragedy for me.
Yeah.
It's such a tragedy because you have people who are true believers and felt they were sacrificing for a greater good. That's what they truly believed. Now they're wrong about that, but they have been manipulated by bad actors for so long that, the human brain, it's so beautiful and yet it's so fragile. It's so easily manipulated. We like to think of ourselves as these logical creatures, and we're so not. We're so ruled by illogic and emotion. And I see all those people who participated in January 6th. There's no question they were wrong. It was violent. People died. They tried to overthrow the government. They tried to stop legal. I mean, there's absolutely no question in my mind. Wrong, illegal, bad, should be punished. That goes without saying. On the other hand, they have been manipulated, and the worst parts of themselves have been encouraged. And the Republican Party doesn't care. They're just continuing. That's what's going to stick with me, is that you see what happens when you manipulate people that way. And then something horrible does happen. And then you're like, still works for me.
I think that's I remember when, I don't know if you remember when this happened, but there was this night when the state of Michigan was thinking about throwing out all of the votes of the people of Detroit. And the way I interpreted that was white precinct captains throwing out a bunch of black people's votes. And I remember thinking I wouldn't blame those people for being violent, because that's the ultimate. And by the way, I remember thinking this, Celeste, and I remember being very upset by my thinking, because I'd never thought this before. I thought I'd join them. If you threw out all of the votes, if you didn't count the votes, if you that's a cause for revolution. Yeah, what is there's nothing else if your vote isn't counted or if it's thrown out. So I too see a lot of those folks who believe that what their impulse was. And I think furthermore, I asked the same questions after 9/11. Why did people hijack planes and crash them in the buildings? Why? What brings someone to the point of committing that kind of violence, which is more extreme in 9/11, less extreme, but still, a lot of these people destroyed their lives on January 6th. And for what? In this case, for a complete lie. And I think it's important to understand that. But my question again to you is, what do you say to how do you differentiate between the people who do know better? They know that I'm thinking Ted Cruz and certain other senators, but that they know the election was not fraudulent and cheated. And I don't know what Donald Trump thinks, and it's hard to even imagine being inside his brain. But there are some people who clearly know that they are selling something that didn't happen. At least that's what my assumption is. Do you think about them? Is it worth thinking about people who don't believe what they are selling to the American public as politicians? It's different if you're the My Pillow guy, but if you're a U.S. senator?
I think the My Pillow guy is one of those people who is so deep into confirmation bias. I think he truly believes. He's a true believer. Ted Cruz, Lindsey Graham knows better. I mean, what do I think of them? I think they're despicable. And we like to think that there are consequences. It's almost as though human society depends upon consequences. I was thinking about this last night as I locked my front door, that I had been in my basement all day long with the door unlocked in my neighborhood. And it occurred to me for just a second, if somebody just decided to walk into my house and threaten me and take everything, they totally could. Absolutely. The fact that I'm not robbed that we're not all robbed every single day is a sign that human society and morality works.
Yeah.
But in order for that bargain to work, there has to be consequences for people. And what people like Ted Cruz and Lindsey Graham are trying to do is get away with it. They're trying to make mistakes again and again and again and escape consequences completely by gaslighting. And it's despicable. And I really need people to face consequences. I don't just need it. I think our society and our entire ethical construct upon which we stand, so that it's not the purge every day, requires it.
I would only push back. I know that's not what you're saying, but most people are good and don't want to break into your house and have no impulse to do that. But what you're saying is, in the very rare occasion, and sometimes obviously people are incentivized by anything from desperation to greed to sociopath, being a sociopath, that they will do bad things. But most people stop at stop signs. Most people will, maybe hold the door. Most people do the right thing, the thoughtful thing most of the time. But what you're saying
because
is
they believe in fairness, right? Fairness is unspoken. Fairness is a principle. Children, you and I are both parents. Children at a very early age understand fair. And when you're being unfair. When you've gotten the bigger slice of cake. And it's unfair, right? There is a particular type of fairness that is required in our society in order for things to work. When we talk about most people being good, what I hear is most people are fair to each other. They're like, that's fair.
I think that's so thoughtful, but let me try to look at it a different way. Like my younger daughter especially, I'll throw her under the bus, often thinks that we favor my older daughter. She gets this, I don't get that. And I look at it and go, dude, not even the opposite is my truth. You actually get away with more, get more, period. And that brings me to another question about fairness. Like, how can anybody think that black folks or women don't have a tougher time in general? And I read this poll that, huge, I've seen this kind of statistic a lot in the last 10 years, and it's the worst statistic to me, that a huge percentage of white folks think they have it harder than black people. So going back to the majority, and I'm not sure if they identify with a label in those polling questions, but a lot of white people think it's harder for them than black people. And going back to your point about fairness, I would say it's not always true that people understand fairness because of my daughter, her interpretation. And who are these white people that think their lives are harder? What in their life is making them think that it's all about their own personal experience of what they see in the media? It's not about data or objective truth, I would argue. But they believe it.
So they do understand fairness. They just think people are being unfair to them. That is really how they see it. They do get that it should be fair. And that's what's making them upset, is because they think it's not fair. Right. The problem is that people are so easy. It's so easy to trick people. It's so easy to fool them. You can read. There's a study that came out a little while ago that was called "Whites See Racism as a Zero-Sum Game," and that they are losing. Right. If it's the same sort of thing where if people believe in a workplace that it's a meritocracy, there's more likely to be racial discrimination. The more we think that the system is fair, the more likely we are to discriminate against others as we try to fix the statistics. You know what I'm saying? In other words, let's say that whites, in terms of opportunities and privileges, are here and blacks are somewhere down here. So people have accepted this as this is what's fair, right? If the system is a meritocracy, I need to lower my hands a little. If the system is a meritocracy, right, then this is what that looks like. So as you begin to pull this side up, that doesn't feel fair anymore. It was a meritocracy. We deserve to be here. Yeah, there's lots of white managers, but I'm the exception. I earned it, my place. It's fair for me. And so as we start to pull this side up, it feels unjust. That's what people are very, very easy to manipulate. And it's partly because our brains are so screwed up. I'll give you an example. The vast majority of people, all people, are more likely to overestimate what they have been through in their own struggles as opposed to other people's. But obviously they are. I know all the things I've struggled with. I don't know what you've been through. Right? That's a particular logical bias because I'm aware of all my own history. I am not aware of other people's. But that can be distorted. That can be perverted by people who have selfish intentions. And this just keeps happening and keeps happening.
It also gets so, and I've noticed this since I first started hosting a radio show and talking to people who I don't know about their grievances, it's so painted by their own personal experience, meaning if the 2 times I went to this restaurant, the service was poor, then that restaurant has poor service. But everybody I know that goes there says they're excellent. Their service is excellent. But my experience is that it's poor. If the few times I've had interactions with, what's an ethnicity that's very specific, the Lebanese community. It's like, the Lebanese people are very, they're selfish or something. And it's like, what? Well, so how do you get around that? How do you talk to people, or should we have conversations with people about taking their anecdotes and their own personal experiences and comparing them to a wider group, whether it, deals with gender or ethnicity or age or anything else? How do you convince people, or should you have a conversation with people about maybe changing their perspective on what that grievance is based on their own personal experience?
It's interesting. I just finished writing a new book that's coming out this fall about talking about race.
Yay!
It's called Speaking of Race. Yeah.
Yay!
And one of the piece of advice in there is to always make it personal. It's so funny to me because people are always like, this isn't personal, or don't make it personal. No, it's always personal. And I want you to be as personal as possible. In other words, you have to tell yourself again and again that that's not what Lebanese people do. It's what this person does. What's that guy's name? Joe. That's Joe. You're trying to be as specific as possible to that person. And it's the same with yourself. This is not the experience of, mine is not the experience of Black, Jewish, single mothers and practicing Buddhists. It's just the experience of Celeste. This is Celeste's experience. And as the more you hyper individualize all of this information, the less you try to become a data scientist or a sociologist and just deal with the people, the better off you're going to be.
Love it. I can't wait for that book. I can't wait. When will it be out?
They're thinking maybe October.
Oh, very exciting. I really am looking forward to reading that. I like to think I talk about the issue a lot. I like to think good about talking about it, but I know I'm going to learn stuff from reading your work, because I'm sure you researched it quite a bit. And then, of course, you have your own experience of talking about it. Speaking of which, do we even want? I'm interested to hear how you're going to respond to this, and I'm not sure how I want to pose the question. So I'll ask it this way: do we want to, with our time right now, talk about the idea of cancel culture? I
mean, cancel culture. What are we even canceling? So instead of talking about the culture, tell me what it is you're canceling, right? I mean, we are just applying that to too many things. It's like when people get a slang term and then overuse it. It's like nobody says I'm on fleek anymore because it just got overused. It's not specific anymore. And it's the same thing with cancel culture. Some things need to be canceled. I shared a meme yesterday, which was like Palpatine says he was thrown down the thing because of cancel culture. If you do something crappy, there should be consequences. Do people overreact and try to be like, this restaurant delivered my thing 30 minutes later, boycott them? Yeah, people do, because we're all dumb and we get mad about our own stuff. But like, if you were canceled because you were a racist, I get to swear on here, right?
Anything you want.
If you're a racist shitbag, then yeah.
So I've been saying, and I wonder if you think this is clever. I've been saying the word "fired" has been replaced by "cancel." Like, did you hear about what happened to Bruce in accounting? What happened? They fired. They canceled him. Why? Well, he took his dick out in the break room. Well, you get fired anywhere for that. Nah, they canceled him. He's never going to get hired again. Well, maybe not, but that's a pretty terrible thing. But then you talk about like this. I don't know if you paid any attention to this, but there's some examples where like this actress that's on this show, The Mandalorian, tweeted comparing Gina Carano, like, and she got fired from the show, and her agent fired her. Similar thing happened with the actor Armie Hammer when he started talking about cannibalizing.
Well, these women start talking.
So what? I mean, how do you take those types of things? I mean, I have no real strong interest in either of those stories because I just don't think they're consequential.
I don't particularly care. But look, if the company that employs me doesn't want to work with me anymore, c'est la vie, man. I mean, I've lost jobs for dumber reasons than being a cannibal.
That's a great point.
I've lost jobs for stupid reasons. I lost a job when I was in college because I didn't bring fresh ground pepper to table 9. So, I mean, yeah, if you're going to compare being a conservative to the Holocaust.
You got canceled for not bringing pepper?
Canceled for fresh ground pepper. Yeah. I mean, look. I think of Josh Hawley saying he's a victim of cancel culture because they canceled this book deal. So right. No, they don't want to work with you. And you can argue with that all you want, but that's the nature of private business. So moving into then, the censorship conversation, and I think it's the most important development since, before the insurrection, or I guess after, is the deplatforming of Donald Trump, but so many others, QAnon and so on. That's also referred to as cancel culture. But I think it's important in moving the conversation along. Like, what do you think it means that he can't tweet? Again, most people disagree with me, and I'm generally always wrong about such things and most things. But I think that him not being able to tweet is massive. I don't think he can lead without repeating a message over and over, Celeste. So people are calling that censorship or canceling, whatever. What is the result of Donald Trump not being on Twitter and other platforms? I just don't think he will have the kind of reach. Part of his success has been in repetition, and just drilling stuff down, not saying a lie once, but saying it again and again and again and again. So he's no longer president. He can't hold those presidential rallies anymore, especially not at the taxpayer expense, which he sometimes did. That's one way he can't drill it in, which means the media isn't covering every single one of his rallies, thank God. But then also not being on Twitter and Facebook means, again, he can't continue to drill this stuff down. He has to wait for the world to come to him. I mean, I don't know if it's what he intended in terms of running for president. I do believe he didn't expect to win and didn't particularly want to win. But the benefit for Trump has been that when you become a serious political person, you are approached for interviews all the time by serious people. And that disseminated his message in a way that no apprentice show could do. And so I think this is a massive detriment to him. I think this is going to have a big impact on how well he is able to keep Trumpsters in line. I mean, they may continue to be Trumpsters, but I don't know if he's going to be in control of them.
Yeah, I wonder exactly, and I wonder about that. So wrapping it all up and all together, thinking about consequences and thinking about media, you're a journalist and you've tried your whole career to get it right, to tell the truth, to work with editors, to make corrections, to do all the things that journalists do to get a story right and honest and true. Do you think there will ever be and should be consequences for major media outlets? Specifically, I'm thinking of the big corporate ones like Fox News, but then smaller ones as well, just doing what they do and getting it so wrong all of the time. People always talk about like the fairness doctrine. Most people probably don't even know what that is. I think it's a ridiculous conversation to think about bringing something like that back because it would never work today. Maybe you disagree, but will there ever be any kind of consequences for Hannity and Tucker Carlson and others who repeat the big lie in this case, or misinform people about climate change or masks or such life and death issues?
I mean, no, Fox News gets away with that because they call themselves entertainment. I think that rather than the fairness doctrine, I would rather talk about the legislation Clinton signed, which allowed media conglomerates to buy up pretty much all of the news sources in a particular locality. I think the danger is when a corporate interest, A, owns all of the news for a particular area or neighborhood, and B, it's a profit generating enterprise. I think the solution is that most news organizations need to be nonprofit. That's the solution. When you are aiming for profit with your news and information, that's how you get stories on, cat videos and whatever stupid Army Hammer. News is basically some of the news that we need to hear and that we need to report on doesn't make money. It doesn't. And it's expensive. Sending someone into tribal areas I was a reporter in northern Arizona for a long time. And when I had to report from from some of the reservations, the Havasupai, for example, who live at the bottom of the Grand Canyon, that's expensive. That's a day or two full time for a reporter to go down there, but that news has to be covered. So if you're evaluating every story, all the reporting you're doing based on how many clicks you get and how much profit you can generate, you're in trouble.
Here's my impression of your manager looking at your invoice. Celeste, says here that you rented a fleet of donkeys to get to. Did you have to get that many jackasses?
You're joking, but they actually, for quite a while, in order to get the election ballots out of the Havasupai reservation, they did use donkeys. Now they have kind of like it's interesting. They have a race to where the election workers will see who can run the ballots out of the Grand Canyon the fastest, and they put them on their backs like a backpack and run them.
Now that's how the story makes profit right there. Just cover that part of it. That is sexy right there. That's fascinating. Such good answers to all of my decent questions. I so enjoy listening to you, watching you, reading you. So thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate all your time, and I look forward to doing it again. Thank you very much, Celeste. Looking forward to a new book. And then there's also a new announcement you've been teasing. You can't say anything about that on this podcast. Can you give a hint as to your new...
It's a project that I'm working on with the National Gallery of Art. And it's very cool.
That's it. That's all we get.
So I'll say this: the National Gallery of Art has a public service component, right? They have for a very long time produced free live concerts from some incredible performing artists every week. You can just walk into the gallery, pay no money, and see these incredible concerts that the gallery pays for. And they have been sitting here during the pandemic going, well, we're still closed. Is there any way to continue serving the public in that way while we're remote? And so the announcement that's coming is the answer to that.
All right. That sounds awesome. What a great thing to be involved with. All right, Celeste. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, as always.
Always a pleasure. Thanks, Pete.
All right, there she goes, Celeste Headlee. Thank you so much for listening to the entire show. Those of you who did, thank you to Mom and Dad. Thank you to Jeff Jarvis and, of course, Celeste Headlee. who I just wrapped it up with. Those of you who are supporting this podcast with a paid subscription, cannot thank you enough. Can't ever. I could not be broadcasting and doing this show every day from the shed and enjoying my work so much without you. If you haven't signed up, what are you waiting for? Join us tonight, Thursdays at 8 p.m. East for the Stand Up with Pete Dominic Happy Hour Hangout. I'll invite my parents to stop by. We'll have drinks, we'll have laughs, maybe some other special guests. You never know who's going to hang out with us. I hope it will be you. Sign up now, patreon.com/Pete Dominic, or just go to the paid subscription link in the show notes. Also, with membership, you get to hang out anytime, 24/7 on the Discord platform, chat, text, video, and that's it. I'm out of time. I got to go to bed. Thank you very much for joining me. Give a review and 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. And now, singer-songwriter John Carroll with the song Stand Up he wrote just for us. Take it away, Johnny.
Off of the fence. Stand up, stand up. Stand up. Stand up. Stand our ground, and that's stand up, stand up. They had to stand up. Stand up. They knew the change was gonna come before the change could begin. Stand up. Stand up. Stand up. Look the devil square in the eye. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment. Stand up, stand up, speak up, reach up, raise your voice in every way you know how. Shows up, show up. Rise up. Listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. Stand up, stand up, just stand up, stand up, stand up, stand up. Stand up.
So, Rush, I see you made it here okay. Driving on roads built with public funds by the government.
Yeah, what about that, Rush? I guess the government's pretty good, like Lois says.
Actually, I took the toll roads, privately built. Way smoother than the crumbling public road system.
Yeah, Lois, government sucks at doing stuff.
Oh, no, toll roads sound great. Too bad only the very rich can afford to use them.
I agree with Lois.
Well, maybe more people could if the government wasn't taxing the bejesus out of them.
Now I agree with Rush. I'm too stupid to make up my own mind.
Yeah, okay, whatever you say, Rush.
So, nice weather today.
Yeah, unseasonably cool. I guess we can forget that whole global warming myth.
Global warming is not a myth, you son of a bitch.
Look, what the hell are you so hostile for?
Because you brainwashed our dog.
Hey, listen, sister,
I'm sorry.
Look, all I did was expose Brian to a different way of thinking. He embraced... Oh, God, I'm going to move over here. He embraced it on his own, Lois.
Well, after Rush opened my eyes, I am seeing the world in a whole new way now. To quote a famous troublemaker, I have a dream.